The shockwave. The training arena still echoed with silence long after Rakor hit the ground. Dust settled slowly, covering his massive body like a shroud. The cadets, once so loud with laughter and mockery, stood frozen. Their eyes shifted, between the fallen instructor and the human girl who had just walked out of the circle. She did not look back. Her steps were calm, steady, and controlled. It was as if nothing had happened. But to the cadets, each step sounded like thunder. One cadet finally whispered, his voice shaking, "She defeated him." Another added, louder this time, "A human beat Rakor." The whispers spread quickly. Soon the entire arena was alive with murmurs. Fear, awe, and disbelief blended together in their voices. The human had not only survived their harshest trials, she had broken their strongest warrior. For generations, humans had been seen as fragile creatures, weak bones, short lives, soft flesh. They were considered the lowest among the stars, unfit for real combat. But now, everything had changed. The Academy had witnessed something that would echo far beyond its walls. The girl stopped at the edge of the circle and finally turned. Her eyes scanned the cadets, calm but piercing. She did not need to speak loudly. Her quiet words reached every ear. "You laugh at humans because you don't understand us. You think weakness is all we have, but when you push us too far..." She paused, her gaze sharp as a blade. "We push back." A shiver rippled through the crowd. No one dared respond. No one dared move. The medics rushed to Rakor, lifting his heavy body onto a stretcher. He groaned faintly, his pride more wounded than his flesh. The cadets exchanged uneasy glances. Their instructor had been undefeated for years, yet a single human trainee had ended his reign in a single fight. The Academy's commander, an old alien with silver eyes, stepped forward. His long cloak dragged against the stone as he walked. He studied the human girl for a long moment, his expression unreadable. Finally, he spoke. "Cadets," his voice rang through the arena. "You have witnessed history today. The galaxy told you humans were weak. The galaxy told you they were fragile. But today you saw the truth." The cadet stood straighter, waiting. The commander's silver eyes turned to the girl. This human did not win with brute force. She won with endurance, precision, and willpower, qualities many of you lack. Remember this lesson. Never underestimate what you do not understand. A heavy silence followed his words. The cadets shifted uneasily, shame burning in their eyes. Their mocking laughter from days before now felt like poison in their throats. The human girl did not answer the commander. She simply gave a small nod and walked out of the arena. As she left, the cadets stepped aside, creating a path for her. None dared block her way. Some lowered their heads in respect. Others avoided her gaze, afraid of what they might see in her calm eyes. Later that night, the whispers spread beyond the Academy walls. Cadets wrote to their families, their voices trembling with excitement and fear. A human defeated Rakor. A human stood against the strongest and did not fall. Maybe humans are not weak at all. The story traveled from planet to planet, carried on every ship, repeated in every corner of the Empire. The legend of the human girl who warned her instructor, "Don't push me," and made good on that warning, shook the galaxy. On distant worlds, where humans were ignored or mocked, people began to ask questions. If one human could do this, what could an entire species do if pushed too far? The shockwave had begun. In the Academy, the cadets who had laughed at her days earlier now sat in silence, replaying the fight in their minds. The sound of Rakor's body hitting the ground, the human's calm voice, the impossible strength in her small frame, none of them would forget it. And somewhere, in the quiet of her quarters, the human girl sat alone. Her hands were bandaged, her body aching, but her mind was calm. She had not come here to prove anything. She had only come to survive. But now, she realized, survival was no longer the only thing at stake. She had changed how the galaxy saw her people. And this was only the beginning, the last warning. The arena was silent. The cadets stood frozen in a wide circle, their eyes darting between the human girl and Instructor Rakor. Dust floated in the air, catching the light, but no one moved. For the first time in the history of the academy, the instructor had stumbled. Rakor's chest heaved with fury. His claws dug into the stone floor, leaving deep scratches. His pride burned hotter than the artificial sun above them. He could not allow this. He could not allow a human to make him look weak. He growled, his voice echoing like thunder. "You dare touch me, human? You dare humiliate me in front of my cadets?" The girl stood calmly, her hands loose at her sides. Her uniform was torn. Blood smeared her knuckles, but her eyes were steady. She did not back away. Her voice was quiet, but every cadet heard it clearly. "Don't push me." The words rippled across the arena. The cadets shivered. It was not a plea. It was not fear. It was a warning. A final warning. Rakor laughed, but the sound was not as strong as before. It cracked at the edges, like glass under pressure. He bared his teeth, trying to cover his unease. "You think you frighten me? You are nothing, human, nothing!" He lunged forward again, his claws sweeping in deadly arcs. The human dodged, her movements sharp, precise. She ducked under his arm, rolled across the ground, and stood back up without hesitation. The cadet's whispers grew louder. "She is faster now. She reads his moves. No human should be able to do this." Rakor snarled, sweat dripping from his forehead. Every strike he launched was met with perfect evasion. The girl wasn't striking back. She was simply avoiding him again and again, letting him waste his strength. Finally, with a roar, Rakor slammed both fists into the ground. The impact shook the arena, cracks spreading across the black stone. Dust rose in a choking cloud, hiding everything from sight. When the dust cleared, the cadets gasped. The human girl was standing right in front of Rakor. She had moved through the dust without fear, closing the distance between them. Her calm eyes looked up into his burning yellow ones. Rakor froze. For the first time, he hesitated. Her voice was barely above a whisper, but it cut through the silence like a blade. "This is your last chance." The cadets could feel the weight of those words. They shifted uncomfortably, their bodies tense. None of them dared laugh now. None of them dared breathe too loudly. Rakor, however, was too proud, too blinded by rage. He roared, louder than ever, his spit flying. "Enough!" His claws raised high, glowing with energy, ready to end her once and for all. The cadets flinched, some even turning their heads away. They didn't want to see the human torn apart. But the girl didn't move. She simply raised her hand, catching his claw in midair. Gasps filled the arena. Rakor's strike stopped, frozen above her head. He growled, pushing down with all his strength. His muscles bulged, his veins pulsed, but her hand held firm. Slowly, painfully, she began to push his claw back. The cadet's jaws dropped. Some whispered in disbelief. "She's stopping him. She's stronger than him? No, that's impossible." Rakor's eyes widened. Sweat poured down his face. His arm trembled as he fought against her. The mighty instructor of the academy, the warrior feared across the stars, could not overpower a human. The girl's calm voice returned, cold and sharp. "You don't listen. And now, it's too late." The cadets felt a chill run down their spines. For the first time, the fear in the arena was not of Rakor. It was of her. Rakor roared and swung with his other arm, desperate to regain control. But she caught that one too. Both of his massive claws were locked in her grip. The mighty instructor was trapped. The crowd was silent, staring in shock. The human's calm expression did not change, but her eyes burned like fire. "This was your last warning," she said, and the cadets knew then. The fight was no longer about proving strength, it was about survival. The final strike. The arena had never been so silent. Hundreds of alien cadets stood frozen, their eyes wide, their bodies stiff. They were watching something they could not understand. Their feared instructor, Rakor, was trapped. Both of his massive claws were locked in the grip of the small human girl. Rakor strained, his teeth bared, his veins bulging with effort. His roar echoed through the hall, but no matter how hard he pushed, her arms held firm. His claws trembled, sweat dripping down his gray skin. The cadets whispered, their voices shaky. "She's holding him. He can't break free." "This isn't possible." The human's calm expression had not changed, but her eyes were sharp now, glowing with determination. She looked at Rakor as if she could see through his pride, through his fury, down to his fear. "You pushed too far," she said softly. Rakor snarled, "No human can defeat me, no human." Before he could finish, she moved. With a sudden twist, she pulled his arms aside and stepped forward. Her knee slammed into his chest with precise force. The sound of impact cracked through the arena. Rakor staggered back, choking, the air knocked from his lungs. Gasps erupted from the crowd. The cadets had never seen their instructor stumble, never seen him hurt. Rakor roared and swung again, his claws slicing downward in fury. But the girl moved like lightning. She ducked under his strike, spun, and drove her fist into his ribs. A sickening crack echoed. Rakor howled in pain, stumbling again. The cadets' whispers grew louder. "She struck him. She broke his ribs. She's faster than him." Rakor's pride shattered. He abandoned all form, all discipline, and attacked like a beast. His strikes came wild and desperate, claws tearing through the air. But the girl was already moving. She slipped past each attack, her steps precise, her counters sharp. She struck his arm, twisting it until his shoulder cracked. She kicked his leg, making his knee buckle. Blow after blow, she dismantled him piece by piece. The cadets could hardly believe what they were seeing. Their mighty instructor, the terror of the academy, was being broken, not by brute force, but by something sharper. Human precision. Finally, Rakor fell to one knee, blood dripping from his mouth, his breaths ragged. His claws hung useless at his sides, trembling. His yellow eyes, once burning with confidence, now flickered with fear. The girl stood over him, her small frame casting a shadow across his massive body. Her voice was calm, steady, and final. "I warned you." Rakor tried to rise, his pride forcing him to fight one last time. But she didn't let him. Her fist shot forward, slamming into his jaw with brutal accuracy. His head snapped back and he collapsed to the ground with a heavy thud. The sound echoed across the arena like thunder. Silence followed. The cadets stared at the fallen instructor, their mouths open, their hearts racing. The human girl stood above him, her chest rising and falling, her fists still clenched. Rakor lay unmoving. The once unstoppable warrior had been defeated. The human did not celebrate. She did not smile. She only looked at the cadets, her eyes calm but unyielding. Her voice carried through the air, soft but sharp. "This is what happens when you push." A chill ran through the crowd. No one laughed, no one cheered. For the first time, the academy cadets looked at a human not with mockery, but with awe and fear. The silence stretched until finally one cadet whispered, barely audible, She defeated him." Another voice followed, trembling. "Humans, they are not weak." And then another. "They are dangerous." The whispers spread like wildfire through the arena, until every cadet was murmuring the same truth. The image of humanity had changed forever. The girl turned away from the fallen instructor and walked calmly out of the circle. Every step she took echoed louder than Rakor's roars. The cadets parted for her, giving her space, their eyes locked on her small frame as if she were something far larger, far more powerful than any of them. For the first time, the academy realized the weakest species they had mocked might be the strongest of them all. Testing limits the next day began with a cruel heat. The academy's sun lamps burned hotter than before, filling the training ground with waves of heat that shimmered in the air. The alien cadets stood in formation, sweat dripping from their bodies, scales and armor glistening. They knew what was coming. The endurance gauntlet. It was designed to push recruits to their breaking point, to show who was strong and who was weak. Instructor Rakor's heavy footsteps echoed as he marched before them. His yellow eyes narrowed. When they landed on the human girl standing quietly in line, she looked tired, but her posture was straight, her eyes steady. "Today," Rakor growled, "we see who is fit to fight. You will run until your legs fail. You will climb until your hands bleed. You will fight the very air until your lungs collapse. Those who fall will be dragged away. Those who stand will be warriors." The cadets braced themselves. The ground vibrated as the horn sounded. The trial began. They sprinted first, across a field lined with jagged stones that cut at their feet. Alien cadets pounded forward, their massive bodies charging with power. Dust rose like smoke around them. The human girl ran too, slower, lighter, but steady. Some cadets surged past her, laughing as they went. One even shouted over his shoulder, "Try to keep up, human." But after the first hour, the laughter started to fade. The larger cadets, built for strength and speed, began to slow, their bodies overheated under the artificial sun. Muscles cramped, lungs heaved. Some stumbled, others cursed. The human did not stop. She kept moving, her breathing measured, her steps consistent. Her uniform clung to her with sweat, but her eyes stayed fixed on the path ahead. By the third hour, 3 cadets had already collapsed. Medics carried them away. The others pushed forward, groaning, their bodies straining. Rakor walked along the sidelines, shouting, his voice booming, "Do not fail me. Weakness will not be tolerated." When his eyes fell on the human, his lips curled into a sneer. She was still running, her face pale but determined. Every step looked controlled, not desperate. The cadets noticed too. Whispers broke out between them. "She's still going. How is she not falling? She is human. This should be impossible." But there was no time to wonder. The next stage began. Walls rose from the ground, jagged cliffs under the blazing heat. Cadets scrambled upward, their claws and talons digging into the rock. The climb tore at their hands, leaving trails of blood and broken nails. The human girl reached the wall. She had no claws, no scales to protect her, only bare hands. The cadets smirked, waiting for her to fail. But she began to climb. Her fingers gripped the stone, her body moving with patience. She did not rush. Every pull, every step was careful and steady. The stone cut her skin, her palms turning raw, but she did not cry out. Halfway up, one cadet slipped, crashing down to the ground below with a scream. Another froze, too exhausted to continue, and had to be dragged off. The human kept climbing. When she reached the top, she hauled herself over the edge and stood tall, blood dripping from her hands, sweat burning her eyes. But she did not collapse. She only looked down at the others, still struggling. Rakor's jaw tightened. He had expected to see her broken by now. Instead, he saw her stronger than many of the cadets he had trained for years. The trial continued. They crawled under electrified nets, sparks snapping inches from their skin. They carried heavy stones, across long distances, their arms shaking under the weight. One by one, cadets fell, yet the human endured. By the time the horn sounded to end the trial, only a handful remained standing, and among them was the girl, bloody hands, trembling legs, but standing tall. The cadets gathered in silence, their breaths ragged. The laughter that had once filled the hall was gone. Now their eyes followed the human with something else: confusion, unease, maybe even respect. Rakor stepped forward, his towering shadow falling across her. His voice was low, sharp. "You survived again. But do not mistake this for victory. Endurance means nothing without strength. Tomorrow we test real power. And then, human, you will break." The girl looked up at him, her expression calm, her voice steady. "Don't push me." The words cut through the silence like a blade. Some cadets shivered, their eyes darting between her and the instructor. It was not a plea. It was a warning. Rakor forced a laugh, but this time it sounded hollow. Deep inside, a flicker of doubt grew stronger, and as the cadets walked back to their quarters, whispers followed the human girl like shadows. She does not fall. She does not fear him. What happens if she's pushed too far? Breaking point. The training ground was silent that morning. The cadets gathered, but this time there was no laughter, no mocking whispers. They had all seen the human girl survive every trial. She had endured the heat, the climbs, the endless runs, and she had done it without fear. But today was different. Today was combat day. Real combat. Instructor Rakor stood in the center, his massive arms crossed over his chest, his yellow eyes burning. The weight of his anger pressed down on the cadets like a storm. He had tried to break the human, but she had not bent. That pride of his, once unshakable, was now turning into fury. He roared, his voice shaking the walls. Warriors are not made by endurance. Warriors are made by blood, by battle, by crushing your enemy until nothing remains. Today, human, you will face me. A ripple went through the crowd. No recruit ever fought the instructor. It was unheard of. But Rakor wanted this. He wanted to prove before everyone that humans were weak. The girl stepped forward. Her uniform was worn, her hands still raw from the climb, but her eyes were calm. She walked into the circle and stood across from him, small compared to his towering figure. The cadets leaned in, their hearts pounding. They were about to witness something that had never been done before. The whistle blew. Rakor attacked first. He lunged like a beast, his claws slicing through the air. The human dodged, but this time his speed was greater. His claw grazed her shoulder, cutting through the fabric of her uniform. She staggered back, her breath catching. The cadets gasped. Blood stained her sleeve. Rakor grinned, baring his sharp teeth. You cannot run forever, human. You will break. He came at her again, his fists pounding the ground like hammers. She dodged left, then right, her movement still calm but slower than before. His strikes grew heavier, faster, fueled by rage. The arena shook with every impact. Finally, he caught her off guard. His massive hand slammed into her chest, sending her crashing to the ground. Dust flew around her as she coughed, struggling to rise. The cadets shouted, some cheering, others silent with dread. Rakor loomed over her, his shadow swallowing her small form. He raised his claw, ready to strike her down, but then she looked up at him. Her eyes were no longer calm, they burned with something deeper. Not fear, not pain, but warning. Her voice was steady even as blood trickled from her lip. I told you, don't push me. The entire arena froze. The words hung in the hot air, heavy and sharp. Rakor snarled, his pride too wounded to stop. Weak words from a weak creature, he roared, and he struck down with all his strength. But this time she did not dodge. She caught his wrist. The cadets gasped, their eyes wide. Her small hand gripped his massive arm, and to everyone's shock, he could not pull free. For the first time, Rakor's face changed. His grin faded, his eyes widened. He tried to wrench his arm away, but her grip held like steel. Slowly, she pushed herself to her feet, still holding his wrist. The crowd whispered, voices rising in disbelief. She stopped him. Impossible. She's stronger than him. Rakor growled and swung his other arm at her, but she moved like lightning, twisting his wrist and pulling him forward. His balance broke, and the mighty instructor stumbled. The cadets shouted in shock. Rakor had never stumbled. The girl's voice was calm again, but now it carried an edge that cut through the air. This is your last warning. The silence that followed was heavier than any roar. Every cadet could feel it. Something inside the human had shifted. Something dangerous had been awakened. Rakor, blinded by rage, ignored it. He roared and charged again, his claws flashing, his teeth bared. He no longer wanted to teach. He wanted to destroy. But the cadets no longer saw him as the predator. They saw him as prey walking into something he didn't understand. And deep down, even Rakor began to feel it. The first touch of fear. The breaking point had arrived. The arrival of the instructor. The training hall of the Orion Military Academy was filled with noise. Alien cadets from different worlds stood in straight lines, their scales, fur, and metallic skins shining under the cold lights. They were the best of their species, gathered here to prove themselves in the most brutal program in the galaxy. Everyone knew this was where soldiers were broken and rebuilt into warriors. At the far end of the hall, the doors opened with a hiss. The alien. Instructor stepped in, his heavy boots echoing on the steel floor. He was tall, broad, and carried himself with arrogance. His skin was deep gray, his eyes burning yellow, and every movement screamed dominance. His name was Instructor Rakor, a veteran of 100 battles. The cadet stood straighter at his presence. Behind him, another figure entered, smaller, thinner, and very different. A human. The cadets tilted their heads, whispering among themselves. A human in the academy was almost a joke. Humans were seen as fragile compared to other species. Weak bones, soft skin, short lives. Many cadets chuckled, their voices like hissing snakes and grinding stone. Instructor Hakor turned to face the lines. His deep voice rolled across the hall. "This," he announced, pointing a clawed hand toward the human, "is your new classmate. A creature from Earth." The human girl walked forward. She was not armored like the others. No horns, no claws, no tail. Just a simple uniform, brown hair tied back, and calm eyes that scanned the room without fear. Rakor sneered. "Do not mistake her presence for strength. She is here because her species begged for a chance to prove themselves. But I will not go easy. If she survives, perhaps humans deserve to stand among warriors. If not, then she dies here." The cadets laughed openly now, their strange voices bouncing across the walls. Some pounded their fists against their chests, in mock salute. To them it was entertainment. But the girl did not flinch. She stood quietly, her hands behind her back, her posture steady. Rakor walked up to her, towering over her small frame. He bent down, his hot breath brushing against her face. "You should have stayed on your little green planet, human," he growled. "Here, you will break." The girl met his gaze. Her voice was calm, soft, but every word carried weight. "Don't push me." For a moment the hall grew silent. The cadets blinked, surprised at her audacity. Then Rakor threw his head back and laughed. His booming voice shook the steel beams. "Don't push you? Girl, I could crush you with one hand." He spread his clawed fingers wide for the class to see. "This is what humans bring to us, soft words and empty warnings." He turned his back on her and barked at the cadets. "Form. Ranks, today we begin endurance trials. Let us see if our new, fragile recruit can even last an hour." The cadets obeyed, their boots thundering as they arranged themselves. The girl moved into position without hesitation. Her calm expression remained, but her eyes carried something deeper, something the aliens did not yet understand. The trial began. The cadets ran through obstacle courses lined with steel walls and pits of fire. They climbed jagged rock walls under high gravity, their muscles straining. They crawled beneath electrified nets that sparked and cracked. Many cadets groaned, their alien bodies tested beyond comfort. Some slowed down, others cursed in their own languages. But the human girl? She moved steadily, step after step. She did not rush, but she did not stop. Her breaths were even, her face damp with sweat, yet her focus unshaken. Rakor watched from the side, his grin slowly fading. He had expected her to collapse in the first 10 minutes. Yet here she was, keeping pace with species far stronger, far larger than her. Whispers rose among the cadets. She is still going. Impossible, humans are weak. She does not fall. But Rakor silenced them with a roar. Do not be fooled. Endurance is nothing without power. Watch closely. She will break soon. Hours passed. The hour's trial grew harsher. Heat lamps burned down from above, raising the temperature to unbearable levels. Muscles shook, throats dried, and several cadets collapsed, dragged away by medics. Still, the human remained. Her uniform was torn, her knees scraped, but her eyes burned with determination. When the whistle finally blew, the surviving cadets stumbled into line, gasping for breath. The human walked into place quietly, her breathing steady, her shoulders straight. Rakor glared at her, his pride wounded. His voice was sharp as knives. You survived, for now. But this was only the beginning. Tomorrow you will face real pain, and you will regret standing here. The girl simply nodded. Her calm voice returned once more. Don't push me. This time. The hall was silent. The cadets exchanged uneasy glances. The warning sounded too calm, too certain. Rakor smirked, but his laughter did not come as easily as before. For the first time, a shadow of doubt flickered in the alien instructor's mind. The first clash the next morning, the Academy's training ground echoed with the sound of heavy footsteps. Alien cadets gathered in a wide circle, their eyes shining with curiosity. Today was combat training, the moment everyone had been waiting for. It was no secret that Instructor Rakor planned to humiliate the human in front of everyone. The ground was made of black stone, cracked and scorched from countless battles. Weapons lined the walls, staffs, energy blades, shock rods. Cadets whispered, their voices filled with cruel amusement. She won't last one strike. Her bones will shatter. Humans do not belong here. Rakor stood at the center of the ring, towering over all. His armor gleamed, his claws flexing with anticipation. His yellow eyes scanned the crowd until they found her, the human girl stepping calmly into the circle. Her uniform was clean, her face expressionless. She looked like she was walking into a quiet room, not a fight. That calmness only made the aliens laugh harder. Rakor's grin stretched wide. Today, he thundered, we test not your endurance, but your strength. Combat decides who is warrior and who is prey. And today, he raised one claw, pointing at her. The prey is human. The crowd roared with laughter. Some stomped their feet, others hissed in agreement. The girl stood silently. She did not take a weapon. Her hands stayed loose at her sides. Rakor noticed and barked a laugh. No weapon? Do you think your soft fists will harm me? He turned to the cadets, his voice booming. Watch closely. Watch how fragile a human truly is. The whistle blew. Rakor charged forward like a storm. His heavy steps cracked the stone beneath him. His claws slashed through the air, aiming for her chest. The cadets cheered, certain it would be over in one strike. But at the last second, the girl moved. Not with panic. Not with fear. She simply stepped aside, smooth and precise. The claws missed her by inches, slicing only air. The crowd gasped. Rakor stumbled, surprised by her timing. He spun around, his eyes narrowing. Lucky, he growled. He attacked. Again, faster this time. His arm shot forward, claws aimed at her throat. But once again she shifted, tilting her body just enough to avoid the strike. The claws cut nothing but wind. The whispers in the crowd grew louder. She dodged him again. No one has ever dodged Rakor twice. How is this human doing it? The girl remained calm, her breathing steady. She didn't strike back. She didn't rush. She only spoke in a low voice, loud enough for him to hear. Don't push me. Rakor froze for a heartbeat. Then he laughed loudly, his booming voice covering his unease. Do not mock me, human. You have no power. Here! He lunged again, this time aiming with both hands. His claws slashed down in a brutal arc. The ground shook as they struck, dust rising in the air. But the human was no longer standing there. She had slipped aside, quick as a shadow. The cadets leaned forward, their eyes wide. Some were no longer laughing. Rakor growled, his pride burning. He was the instructor, the feared warrior of the academy. No recruit had ever embarrassed him before. Yet this human, this fragile being, refused to be caught. Finally he roared and swung a massive kick at her side. The impact sent a shockwave across the ground. This time the girl blocked. She raised her arm, twisting her body just right. The force slid past her instead of crushing her. She staggered back a step but did not fall. The silence in the arena was heavy now. Rakor bared his teeth. You think avoiding me makes you strong? You are nothing without attack. Show me your strength, human. Strike me if you dare. The cadets waited, holding their breaths. This was the moment. Would the human finally try to fight back? But she only stood straighter, her calm eyes locked on him. Her voice was quiet, steady, but carried through the entire arena. "You don't want me to do that." The crowd shivered. Some cadets exchanged nervous glances. For the first time, they weren't sure if this was still a joke. Rakor snarled, anger boiling in his chest. He raised his claws again, ready to crush her. But deep inside, a small seed of doubt grew. Why wasn't she afraid? Why did her warning sound more like a promise? The clash was far from over, but one truth had already taken root in the minds of the cadets. This human was not what they expected. And for the first time, the mighty Rakor felt something strange when facing her. Not superiority, not confidence, but unease.